Welcome to the Mio1 MMA podcast, talking about the PFL playoffs today, as well as UFC 305. Beforehand, let's get into the usual disclaimer here. I'm going to talk about fight odds. I'm going to talk about who I think is going to win. I'm going to break down fights, and you can use this for betting purposes, but always bet within your limits. Do not look at betting on MMA as a path to financial freedom, because that's not what it is. This sport is too unpredictable, too random, too chaotic to make that a life's goal. You will lose money if you bet heavily on fights at some point, and don't come crying to me when that happens. So there you go. But keep it small. Keep it small. Alrighty. Let's talk about the PFL first. Well, actually, okay. Can I just talk about a little something here? There is two conversations going on right now on MMA social media that I have a problem with. Okay, number one is the UFC, for some reason, and I missed this at the time, but had Teflon Nchukwu as the first ever Cameroonian fighter in UFC history. And that has led to this weird thing of Francis Ngannou erasure because, he was born in Cameroon. Yes, he fought out of France, but guess what? Teflon Nchukwu didn't fight out of Cameroon. He fought out of the United States. He was a Lloyd Irving guy. Shudder slightly in the force on that one. And on top of that, Francis wasn't even the first one because it was Ramon Thierry Sokoudjou. And there might have actually been someone before that. I want to say that there was someone way back when that was actually from Cameroon. But at the least, it was Sokoudjou. So that was weird. That's a moment that I don't think got enough discussion at the time. I don't know. And on top of that, there's also the discussion about Dricus Du Plessis off of this UFC 305 fight, if he wins, getting a fight in Africa. And of course, this has led to a lot of cringe conversation, including calling Isreal Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, Francis Ngannou not purebred Africans. And then someone trying to clarify we just mean they don't train there. Okay, well, maybe don't use the term pure breed. I've seen that multiple times. It's freaking weird. That is horrifyingly weird. But here's the deal. Africa has not rejected Isreal Adesanya or any of their ilk. When they went there with the UFC belt for their victory parades and so on, there was a massive response. And these countries are used to their athletes having to leave to pursue their dreams. Be that in football, both American and European, be that in combat sports, be that in whatever, basketball, etc. It doesn't matter. They generally have to leave because the infrastructure and the finances of their countries do not actually allow them to pursue their dream. There's not the coaching, there's not the training partners, there's not the safety and security, frankly, of the profession. So yes, they leave. That's not held against them. This is the thing. You could, for example, say that, okay, we didn't do an Isreal Adesanya card in Africa because the UFC is not going to Nigeria. And you would totally be correct. You have hit the nail on the head. And I don't know why we have to be weird about it otherwise. I don't know why we have to get into discussions of pure breeding and real Africans and all of this noise as if Isreal Adesanya or Kamaru Usman being in Nigeria or Francis Ngannou being in Cameroon would have actually led to an event there. It just wouldn't have. South Africa is a market that probably can support a UFC event, and that's why they'll go there. Now, they hopefully, in their theory, have a South African champion for long enough to be able to do it. That's the reason. So I'm not on the Dana White is a racist bandwagon or whatever, because I've always said this. I think Dana White's issues with people tend to be more, are you doing what I want you to do? And if not, I don't like you. Sort of deal. And that is realistically it. DDP is a technically African champion, and he comes from a country that might actually be profitable to host an event in that Nigeria and Cameroon do not have that advantage. That's the answer. So hopefully that discussion dies away pretty quickly. Otherwise, let's get into the fights. So let's talk about PFL first. I've been tending to do this because I tend to say rather little about PFL. We have the 205 and the 155 tournaments going on here. Looking to set up the finals, semifinal time. Here we go. Ipa Kasanganay versus Josh Silvara, a fight that has already happened. Kasanganay won by decision. I don't see it going all that differently this time. Don't get me wrong, Silvara is bigger. He's a more proper 205er. He does have a good grappling game. He is fairly athletic. There are paths to victory for him against Kasanganay if he can make Kasanganay grapple with him predominantly. But Kasanganay was able to find solutions to it before, and I have no doubt that he can do it again. It's just there hasn't been enough time. They fought, let's see here, November of 2023. So it's been 9 months. There's just there's not really a thought that Silvara, and to be clear, like Silvara has been doing the tournament, so he's been prepping for other opponents the whole time. It's just unlikely. So Kasanganay by decision is my pick. Rob Wilkinson versus Duvlet Yakhshimuradov. I've got Wilkinson to be the bigger guy, the more powerful guy in the clinch. Kind of doing a lot of what like Carl Albrechtsen did to Yakhshimuradov when he fought him in Bellator back in 2021, where he was able to just kind of utilize the fact that like Yakhshimuradov is a guy who's very, very short for 205. Like he's nicely powerful, he's strong, etc. Don't get me wrong. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Azamat Mirzakhanov over in the UFC, but like worse. And yeah, he thrives in an area that Wilkinson tends to thrive in. Wilkinson also is not a bad striker at range, so he can utilize, let's see here, what's the reach gap here? 8 inches. Yeah. 8 inches of reach, 4 inches of height. So yeah, Wilkinson is the pick. Could Yakhshimuradov beat him? Certainly. Wilkinson has lost, I don't know, actually. You know what? I'm going to say this. Wilkinson has only lost to CR Baharazada and Isreal Adesanya. That is actually really, really, really impressive. And then, of course, he got bested for PEDs against Thiago Santos. But otherwise, he's had a really good career. Anyways, there you go. Gadzi Rabadanov. I don't know why I've struggled with that name so much. Versus Michael Dufort. I would love to pick the Canadian Michael Dufort. He's a nice dynamic fight finisher, and it's all fun and all that, but like he's also lost to like Adam Piccolotti and Kyle Prepolek and Jesse Ronson via like, a lot of the same things that Rabadanov is going to do to him. So Rabadanov by decision to do his usual thing. Brett Primus versus Clay Collard, the classic grappler versus striker. Collard is not bad at defending takedowns. He's got a little something to him, but like almost everyone who's persistently offered a takedown threat against him has beaten him. Like you're looking at Mads Burnell, you're looking at AJ McKee, you're looking at Olivier Aubin-Mercier, you're looking at Alex Martinez, you're looking at Raush Mafio, you're looking at, even way back in the day, like Derek Minner. And was it? No, Alex White. He wrestled Alex White. Right. I was gonna say, I want to say Alex White Whiteout grappled him. No, that's not the case. And then like Tiago Trator. So yeah, I got to go with Brett Primus. He's a good grappler. He's a bit on the older side. He is coming towards the end of his stuff, but like he is actually a legitimately top level grappler and top level lightweight outside the UFC. So Primus decision, if not by submission, because Primus is actually a good submission artist. When he feels like he wants to go for it. For example, he's had rear naked chokes over Solomon Menfro and Bruno Miranda in the PFL already. He's also a guy who has finished Chris Bungard, Tim Wild, and that's about it. Everyone else is pretty bad. So I don't know. Collard would be one of his more high profile finishes. I guess he'll do that. Baggio Ali Walsh is fighting a dude who's like 500 as an amateur fighter. He'll win. I don't care. Danny Sabatello versus Lazaro Dayron. I'm going with Danny Sabatello because Dayron likes to fight the same type of fight that Sabatello does, and that is usually not winning formula. If you're going to wrestle with Sabatello, you're probably going to lose. Elvin Espinoza versus Mads Burnell. I'm going to go with Mads Burnell by decision there. Espinoza could definitely win. Like he's a 10-1 fighter. He's really exciting, really athletic. He's got some cool stuff. flying knee Adam Piccolotti earlier in the tournament. But it's just like I don't trust that kind of dynamic output to like actually carry the day against Mads Burnell. I know it can happen. He got guillotined by Michael Dufour, for example. But realistically speaking, I don't know if guys like Adam Boric can't knock you out with ease, and guys like Daniel Weichel and Clay Collard and Justin Gonzalez and Emmanuel Sanchez and Saul Rogers, these are better fighters than Espinoza. Let's be honest here. Am I going to be shocked? No, but I do think Burnell should have that one. And otherwise, it's just obvious. Like, we're here to get Thad John a win. We're here to get Jordan Oliver a win. We're here to get Michelle Montague a win. And that's probably going to happen. That's all there is to it. I am a little bit disappointed that the Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Carl Albrechtsen fight is not happening. That was actually something I was not like getting hard over, but but like there was some significant questions there and intrigue there. So it's a little shame that that's not happening. UFC 305 is headlined by a middleweight title fight between Dricus Du Plessis versus Isreal Adesanya. Let me start by saying that there is a version of Adesanya that actually makes this fight look really, really easy. It's a version of him that existed in kickboxing. It's a version of him that existed probably actually pretty early in his MMA career as well, but has not existed in a long time. The last time this guy existed, I think, was like the Robert Whittaker fight in 2019, the last Whittaker fight that he won by decision. That was kind of what we're talking about here. And I guess you could kind of say the Costa fight, but like I always put that as more just Costa self-destructing than like is he doing like the right things. And like now we have a 35-year-old Izzy Adesanya who is mentally seemingly a little checked out, doubting himself. I don't know, like that Sean Strickland fight just you cannot watch that Sean Strickland fight and not think, you know what? There's a lot of this that Dricus Du Plessis can just do. Yes. Izzy has the kickboxing game, the technical striking. He has the reach advantage of 4 inches plus 3 inches of height. He has good footwork at a time. He is evasive at a time. He is a good counter striker at a time. He is a good kicker at a time. And like all of these things should beat DDP, who is surprisingly fight IQ heavy, despite the fact that his like technical game suggests none of that fight IQ. And relies a lot on like just being kind of like a wrecking ball coming forward. The problem is that's what Strickland did and won 3 rounds very, very clearly. Lost 1 and then like 1 was a toss up. And I don't know. Like we haven't seen Izzy from that. Maybe that loss has got Izzy Adesanya clued back in, ready to go. Ready, like no, I got to be smart. I got to be smart. I got to be dangerous. I got to be, all of these things. I got to actually be prepped. I got to have a game plan that isn't just a counter hook for the love of God. And maybe he can do that. But I have to pick DDP to be able to put the pressure on him and to, walk through fire to find his range, his power strikes, his potentially takedown game and make that work because we have seen Isreal Adesanya have problems with like wrestling against people like even Alex Bahia, who's not a wrestler. Jan Blachowicz, who's not a wrestler. I love that Jan Blachowicz always gets brought up as like a wrestler a lot. Like it's been talked about like vis-a-vis with like even Alex Bahia's thing. Like, what do you mean Alex Bahia is like not really all that proven as a takedown artist? He fought Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz is not a good wrestler. I don't know how to break this to you, but whatever. Anyways, enough of that segue. I'm picking DDP by decision. He is tough, durable, physical, punishing, will be aggressive, tends to have surprisingly good game plans, and that is why I have to take him. I just don't trust Isreal right now. I hope to be wrong. Because honestly, if Isreal comes out and fights like he did against Sean Strickland, this becomes a very sad fight very quickly. Whereas if Isreal Adesanya comes out with like a game plan and like some fine-tuned things and some ideas to keep it at range, even if he dominates, it's a better fight because at least it's something new. And if he doesn't dominate, then at least DDP has to show some solution, problem solving to those questions that Izzy's going to ask him, and on a technical and physical level, because again, part of that is going to be like I said, the 4 inches of reach and the 3 inches of height. So DDP by decision. Betting odds, I'm a little surprised to see Adesanya is the favorite at -110 to -122, although they are dead even on like a couple lines. There's a couple of like 110, 110 lines, even money lines, with DDP -110 to +100. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the champion should be like a big favorite or anything. Anything more north of, I don't know, -150 would probably be like incredibly disrespectful. But it does feel like the guy who's like coming off a win over Sean Strickland versus the guy who's coming off a loss to Sean Strickland probably should be the favorite, but okay. Kai Kara-France versus Steve Erceg. This is a flyweight co-main event, and I am here for it. I will say that I was talking with Byron a couple nights ago. We were talking about this fight, this Erceg versus Kai Kara-France fight, and he was like really like, he was like, "There's no way Erceg's gonna win this fight," like kind of dismissively, and I was like, "Huh." Who has Kai Kara-France actually fought that's kind of like Steve Erceg? And I was looking through his record. He has no wins over a current UFC flyweight. The only guy still on the roster, for sure anyways, is Cody Garbrandt. Which is, I don't know, it's a really weird place to be put in there. Kai Kara-France, very clean, very technical, high-paced striker, can throw in volume, solid anti-grappler. That's an area of his game that has come way along, as well as counter-grappling. Originally, that was a big problem for him. He was a guy that, like, if you could make it into, frankly, an MMA fight versus a kickboxing fight, you would have a lot of success against him. And that has not happened nearly as much. He shut down Askar Askarov, for example. And that's very, very hard. So he's got the tools, theoretically, to beat Erceg. Erceg is coming in with a bit of a weird resume himself because he got a really weird title shot. Like a bizarre title shot. Like I understood it. I understood the mechanics of it. I understood the needs of it, etc. But it was a bit weird that a guy coming off a win over, like, what was it, Alessandro Costa was getting a title shot. Like that was a bit bizarre. Let's be honest. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah. David Dvorak. Oh, pardon me. Matt Schnell fight. I forgot the Matt Schnell knockout. Okay, David Dvorak, Alessandro Costa, and Matt Schnell. Knockout there. So bit of a weird path to the title, and then had a better outing than I think most people expected to, because I thought Pantoja would have a fairly easy time with him, and he didn't. And Erceg has shown off a surprisingly depth range boxing game, good jab, good little counter setups as well, a bit more power than I was expecting, honestly. On the regional scene, he was just kind of, I don't know. He came off as kind of like an awkward guy on the regional scene, and like in the UFC, it's been like tightened up a lot. We're going to talk about Stuart Nickel later and how that might also be something that happens with him, but also something that I have like fundamentally like questions about. But I kind of got to go with KKF, Kai Kara-France in this one, because like he is the better striker, I think, or at least the more MMA sound striker, and surprisingly has a half inch of reach, despite being 5 inches shorter than Erceg. That's a bit weird. So there is that question of like, what does Erceg's reach do? But like Kai Kara-France is a 5'3" fighter. He's pretty used to facing taller guys and guys with larger reaches and solving the problem. So I do think that that's going to happen, because I think he's a good enough counter wrestler and a guy who will avoid the wrestling exchanges with Erceg in a way that Pantoja obviously didn't. That should allow for a bit of, I don't want to say a showcase, because in no way is Erceg going to get like flatlined here or run over, but I just really like the stylistic matchup for Kai Kara-France. Could be wrong. Wouldn't mind it. Steve Erceg's a fun fighter, and I love a nerdy fighter, and he is definitely that. And I love a technician. I love a guy who's bringing in new skills to his fights every time out. But I can't shake this idea that this is just a really good matchup for Kai Kara-France. Kai Kara-France by decision. Erceg is the -163 to -185 favorite. Kai Kara-France +130 to +150. Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan Hooker is not a fight I'm looking forward to. I want to stay for the record. I like both of these fighters. Dan Hooker has been in some all-time bangers, fantastic fights. His fight with Paul Felder, Dustin Poirier comes to mind. There's a number of other ones here. Let's see here. Let's just salivate over Dan Hooker's record here before I pick against him. The fight with Jalen Turner was really fun. The fight with the Ally Quinta fight, James Vick, pretty good fight. The fight with Edson Barboza was incredibly stupid on his part, but I appreciate it. I do in fact appreciate the stupidity of it. So yeah, I'm going with Gamrot. I appreciate Gamrot's like persistent wrestling style and so on, and it's I think been historically a big problem for Hooker when people just keep it on him and are like really, really durable and willing to eat his best shots to get a takedown. And Gamrot is that. So Gamrot by decision. Probably not going to be a great fight. Probably not a great use of either guy, honestly, because like Gamrot's in like legitimate title contention. Not really. He should be because, you know, on paper he has a win over Saryukian. On paper he has a win over Fiziev. On paper he has a win over RDA. That one's not so much on paper. That one's an actual win. But you look at his record and he should be in like title contention, and this fight doesn't really do anything for him in that regard when you're running a RDA, Fiziev, Turner win streak, then the loss to Beneil Dariush, the win over Saryukian, a recently revived Carlos Diego Ferreira. Should be something more than this, but hell, maybe you could even do like the Saryukian rematch. But and the other problem is, of course, you've got Hooker in front of the home crowd, and he's probably just going to lose. I mean, not really the home crowd. He's a New Zealand boy, but the Australians tend to, in the face of another foreign fighter, back the New Zealanders. They do tend to do that. So we'll see. Anyways, betting odds. Gamrot is a prohibitive favorite at minus 333 to minus 375. Hooker plus 250 to plus 290. Tai Tuivasa versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Finally, we're using Tai Tuivasa correctly, and we just run up a 4-fight losing streak with him for no reason by treating him as like a contender that he's just not. He's just a fun dude. Do fun fights with him. So Tai Tuivasa pushes enough of a pace that Rozenstruik should probably have to throw with mean intention early on. Like the problem with Rozenstruik is that he is quite willing to have a boring fight. I don't think Tai Tuivasa is going to give him that option. He's going to, bring the fight to him, and that should bring out the best in Rozenstruik, who is a harder hitter, probably a better striker, very durable. Like if you look at Rozenstruik's losses, they're like really, really like top of the food chain, like, TKO artists, like, we talked about him earlier, Francis Ngannou. The weird knockout by Alexander Volkov notwithstanding, I guess. That one was weird. Whereas Tuivasa, I think, is losing some of his, illustrious durability. I don't even know if it was ever on the same level. Like, this is a man that did lose in 2018 by stoppage to Junior Dos Santos in the second round. He's been knocked out in kickboxing a couple of times. Knocked out again in MMA by Cyril Gunn, although more attritive, and also by Sergey Pavlovich. So I'm got to go Rozenstruik by knockout. He is the powerful guy. He is the slightly better counter striker, particularly. And he is the minus 218 to minus 245 favorite against Tuivasa's plus 175 to plus 190. I will be cheering for Tai, though, because honestly, that crowd will go nuts in Australia if he wins. The Leech, Jiang Li versus Carlos Pratis. The Leech returns after a long layoff due to, I believe it was a neck injury, compressed C-section vertebra. Anyways, I like the Leech. I've always been a big fan of the Leech. I think he's got an underrated game, I think, in a lot of ways. He's a good boxer. He's a good wushu fighter. Kung Fu. He does a good job with that, and also brings a very good wrestling game that can be proactive with takedowns and also, some level of submission game and ground and pound. And he's up against Carlos Pratis, who is a very exciting range kickboxer type guy. A little bit one-dimensional in that regard. And I'm a little bit weirded out by this. I understand the Leech hasn't fought in some time. I understand that. I understand that he is now 36 years old, coming back from a major injury. And last time he fought, it was a close fight with Daniel Rodriguez, who we don't have a lot of respect for anymore. But I thought he beat Rodriguez. A lot of people thought he beat Rodriguez. And Practice's best win is Trevin Giles. I understand that Practice is finishing people. He's won 9 in a row. But like that does stand out that like the best win in that chunk is Trevin Giles. And the second best win is Charles Radke. These are guys that are just not anywhere near as complete or as good as the Leech at like anything. Like Giles is a good athlete, but he is remarkably badly structured as a fighter and like has he really desperately wants to be a slick fighter, but has like none of the technique that leads to that. And that's how he got knocked out by Practice. The Leech is more fundamentally sound. I'm not saying Practice cannot win this fight. Practice could win by knockout. But like, I'm going with the Leech by TKO, and I think this minus 333 to minus 390 line on Practice is disrespectful. The Leech is plus 250 plus 295. Next up, we have a dice rolling fight. We have the heavyweight grappler Walter Walker versus the heavyweight knockout artist Junior Tafa. Neither of them are very, very good. Neither of them have particularly great technical skills in any particular area, even the one that they are good at. They are both reasonably athletic and reasonably powerful for the division and so on. I'm just going to roll a dice. Comes up one. The odds were Tafa. We're going with Tafa by knockout. There you go. Welcome to heavyweight. Tafa is the favorite at minus 125 to minus 138. Walker plus 120 to plus 130. Then we have Josh Culibao versus Ricardo Ramos, which is a classic matchup that doesn't usually get talked about quite as much because we have Culibao, who is the well-schooled guy who fights to a winning condition pretty much always. Brings volume, brings a pace, tries to break you, has a well-studied idea of what you're good at, but lacks the physical tools to really take a fight from someone. And Ramos is the opposite, where he is a dumbass, but an athletic dumbass. And therefore, he is able to theoretically beat people for long stretches at the highest levels of the game, and also lose to like very mid-tier fighters, and like randomly get submitted despite being a BJJ black belt by Julian Erosa and Charles Jourdain in basically the same fashion. I'm going with Culibao because I feel better about going with the guy who is going to have a game-winning game plan and an ability to push the pace, and I trust just to do the right things. And Ramos, even if he wins and I pick him, I'm not going to feel great about that because he is a guy who literally will do the exact wrong things. Like he loves to spin, for example. He loves to be winning a fight in a phase and then completely ignore it for long stretches of a time. It's a frustrating guy to pick. Whereas like with Culibao, it's like whatever. If he loses, he's just not athletic enough, and I don't feel bad about it. I guess that's what it comes down to. So I'm not going to be surprised if I'm wrong on this fight, but I am going to go Culibao. He is minus 150 to minus 157, so I think people are largely kind of picking up on the same vibe, and Ramos is plus 120 to plus 130. Casey O'Neill versus Luana Santos. This is another bit of an oddity here. Casey O'Neill is a fighter that I was familiar with before she got to the UFC because I'd be watching her and I'd be like, hey, this girl's a pretty good grappler. I like the pace and the volume and the aggression she pushes on the fights. But I do think that like she's fundamentally limited because she's not that physical. She's not a great athlete. She's going to be fun, but like she's not going to really go places. Then she got to the UFC and people were like, wow, this girl is a title contender. No, I have never had a fighter that I was like, relatively high on, relatively fanish of, get to the UFC and then suddenly people were like blowing her or him out of proportion, and I was just standing there like ending up as a hater of O'Neill because I don't get it. And we kind of saw the problems with in her fight with Jennifer Maia and also Ariane De Silva, formerly Lipski. I know that like the marriage names tend to take a while for me to stick, and also Ariane De Silva. I'm pretty sure there are 2 other fighters with that same name, so I feel like the Lipski kind of will probably be a permanent part of this. But anyways, That's the issue. She doesn't have a particularly powerful wrestling game or a particularly diverse one, and she doesn't have power. Like, that's the thing, is she has to weaponize volume to do some things. And when people can just like stand in the pocket and eat her shots and just do what they're going to do anyways, like Maya did, like De Silva did, it goes badly. So now the question is Santos that? Because Santos is a very raw fighter. She's a strong, competent lockdown grappler, but her striking is very much a work in progress. Like, it didn't look too bad against like Juliana Miller or Stephanie Egger, but they are terrible strikers. And Maria Agapova, her third UFC opponent, has serious bully issues in the fact that if she can't bully you pretty much immediately, she just falls apart into her own insecurities and madness. So I have a lot of questions. If O'Neal puts a pace on her, is she just going to kind of crumble? Is this the type of fight that like O'Neal can win because she's the more complete fighter? Or is this a fight where like Santos, who is seemingly reasonably durable, does pack a little bit of a punch, and is a good takedown artist, just going to kind of overpower her and like smash her in the clinch over and over and over again and put her on the mat, put her on the canvas, control her and lock her down like she does do? Or even if that happens, can O'Neal counter scramble and actually get to some good positions? So I'm pretty excited for the fight. There is a version of it that is probably likely and dull, which is Santos just doing the lockdown grappler thing. And it is what I'm going to pick. I'm picking her by decision. But there are some potentially fun fights here. And it's also, I think, a test that both of them kind of need. So I like the matchmaking in that regard. It sets the winner up to be something more than they are now. And I like that. Sometimes that's really lacking in a fight card. Santos is the favorite, minus 135 to minus 159. Pardon me. And O'Neal is a plus 110 to plus 128 underdog. Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns. Jack Jenkins is a ridiculous favorite here. I'm just going to say it right now. This guy did lose to Chepe Mariscal. I understand that's looking to be a very understandable thing, given Mariscal then beat Morgan Charrier and then absolutely destroyed Damon Jackson last time out. But I'm a little nervous about betting a minus 700 to minus 800 favorite in Jack Jenkins, coming off a loss to Chepe Mariscal. Burns is plus 480 to plus 550. I understand like the logic here. Jenkins is a good athlete. He is a technical striker with power, particularly really good leg kicks. He's like broken, I think, like 3 different legs with his low kicks. Very impressive. And Burns, despite having some dynamic striking and obviously being a top of the food chain grappler, is not durable, is not mentally tough, and either has bad cardio or has serious adrenaline dumping issues that has led to this guy not winning fights out of the first round, except for on 3 occasions, and the best of those opponents is Hiroshige Tanaka, who's a fine fighter, but should not be your biggest prove-it moment. So anyways, you have the issues with durability, you have the issues with toughness, you have the issues with cardio with Burns, you have the fact that he can be broken, you have the fact that Jenkins is going to kick his legs really, really hard, you have the fact that Jenkins is going to hit him really, really hard, has a good, counter game, and just generally a pretty complete, striking game, and doesn't seem that easy to take down. That's the thing. He does have 2 early submission losses on his record. So, there are definitely questions about his grappling, and Herbert Burns is a great grappler, like I said. But he seems to be working on it. Seems to be keeping the takedowns from becoming a regular thing. Chepe Mariscal didn't have a lot of success against him. Hang on, let me pull up the numbers. Yeah, Chepe Mariscal had, Mariscal officially 1 for 1 on takedowns. Man, now I look like a dumbass on that one. I don't know. I still would not feel good about picking Burns in this fight. Now, if you want to bet on him at plus 480 to plus 550, I wouldn't mind that. Jenkins is too big of a favorite, but I am picking Jenkins by TKO. So there you go. Tom Nolan, Alex Reyes. I'm picking Tom Nolan by TKO. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of Tom Nolan. I still really do believe that he's only a decently athletic dude who happens to be 6'3" at lightweight. So he's, huge. But he actually has a 73-inch reach, so he's not that huge, effectively. But Alex Reyes is bad. I don't even know why he ever got signed back in the day, because dude would can crush really bad opponents and did not look technical or particularly athletic even. Like, he looked strong, but that was about it. And then he had some serious injuries and lost a lot of his career. Now he's a 37-year-old, really underseasoned guy who's like, at whatever athleticism he had is like failing. So, and his durability is not good. Nolan, TKO. Don't know about this minus 1115 to minus 1400 thing that he's got going on. Ray is at plus 680 to plus 750. I'm not gonna even at that odds. I'm not betting on Reyes. My point more is that like there is just no way you bet on Nolan at those odds. Like you just don't bet on this fight. Kenan Song versus Ricky Glenn. Ricky Glenn is a former 145er who's coming up to 170. Was already small at 155. Why? I understand that he brings a lot of pace and aggression to the table, and like those are things that historically have been a problem for Song because Song likes to fight a very low speed, low dynamic but low output fight. He wants to like stand at range and like kind of stare at you, and then you stare at him, and then he throws a body kick, and then you throw a body kick, and then he throws a body kick, and then he jabs, then you jab, and there's like no breaking of like the cycle. He's just too big. He's just too big, strong, and powerful for Ricky Glenn. Ricky Glenn's 35 years old. I don't know why you, I don't understand this 170, but I don't understand the decision to fight at 170. Anyways, and it's not a late notice fight as far as I can tell. Anyways, Song by TKO is my pick. Glenn has had some durability issues in the past. Song is a hard hitter. Yes, Glenn could just overwhelm with aggression and pace, and I would love to see it, frankly, because I am a big fan of Ricky Glenn when things are firing on all cylinders. But I can't pick it. I'm actually surprised Song is only a minus 175 to minus 192 favorite. I'm betting on that. And Glenn is plus 140 to plus 160. And then we have the Stuart Nickel versus Jesus Aguilar fight. And I think I have to take Jesus Aguilar. I understand that Nickel is an undefeated guy. And there seems to be like, some decent ideas. He's got some good low kicks. He's got a tenacious takedown game. But it's not a great takedown game. And he doesn't seem to be like especially athletic in any real way. Like there's no spark there. Like he's a can crusher. And to be clear, like, can crushing is how a lot of guys get to UFC. His opponents have a 28-18 combined record. His best opponent is 5-0. Issei Cantano, whose 5 wins are over 4 dudes who have never fought before, and 1 dude who's 7-6-8. Yeah, and at the end of the day, it wouldn't surprise me if Nickel were to beat Aguilar, because Aguilar himself is like this terribly structured fighter. Like he's a guy who jumps guillotines as a predominant way of defending takedowns. He's got a decent boxing game, but he's incredibly short, 5'4", 62 inches. I don't have a reach read on Nickel, but I assume it's longer. Hang on, does UFC stats have a one for him yet? They don't always have one for debuting fighters. 65. Okay, so not much longer. 3 inches plus 1 inch of height. But I just got to go with Aguilar. Like he's proved himself against like actual fighters of like semi-UFC quality. Not like high UFC quality, mind you. But his win over Mateusz Mendonca, which is a bad fight, is just better than anything we've seen Stuart Nickel do. If you feel like confident in Stuart Nickel, like he's an undefeated guy, he's coming into the UFC with like some good momentum and whatever, but like, I don't know, this just feels like the type of guy who gets pushed back because he's fought a bunch of dudes who are just not good, like technically or physically. And maybe he gets caught in a guillotine when he goes for like one of his like really long, prolonged chain wrestling takedowns. Or maybe he gets outboxed by Aguilar. Or maybe he finally pays for that weird reset he has on his low kicks. Like he'll kick low and then like kind of like do this like long rotation back to getting back to balance that like someone should have hard countered by now. But he's fighting guys who are just not very good. And I'm going to go with Aguilar by decision. TKO is also on the table. Submission is on the table. Nickel is a plus 230 or minus 230 to minus 250 favorite. I don't understand that. Like, it's too much. Like him being like, I could dig him being like minus 140, minus 150 or something. But we've only seen Aguilar lose to Tetsuya Taira. It's not like he's even lost to like, you know, guys at the bottom of the food or guys at the bottom of the food chain of the UFC. Like he's fought in the UFC. I want to say 3 times. Yeah. 3 UFC fights, including, and then one on the Dana White Contender Series, one by guillotine on the Dana White Contender Series. Looked pretty good against Erceg Ferreira. Lost to Tetsuya Taira. That's fine. Taira's really, really good. And then, nuked Shannon Ross. Don't care about that. And then beat Mendonca. So I get it. Like, there's nothing really impressive there. Like, probably the most impressive win is the Contender Series fight against Erceg Ferreira. But I don't know. Like, I can't look at any of Nichols' fights and think that he's definitely ready for the UFC. That's my takeaway. Also, side note, he fought in a promotion called Beatdown Promotions that seems to have like a really tiny cage. And that might also be a problem because like a lot of his game is, all right, I'm going to shoot in, I'm not going to get the takedown, and I'm going to push you into the cage. You could definitely do that in the UFC, don't get me wrong, but like there's a lot more space to work with. What I'm getting at. Aguilar is plus 180 to plus 200. Anyways, those are my predictions. Check out the social media down below. Enjoy the fights, and I will be here after them on Sunday with my recap.